This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
Andre gets his driver's license at 18. And I guess we should mention, you only had to go to school till you were 14 at the time. So he quit school there. By 15, he's already 6'6". He's got a driver's license at 18, and he's going to move to Paris to become a wrestler, or at least train to become a wrestler. And the following year, when he's 19, he's featured in a wrestling magazine. He's billed as Jean Fier, and he's 6'9", 300 pounds. He's got a 44-inch neck, they say, size 16 feet. But this is a different looking Andre than the one we saw at WrestleMania 3. It's probably worth a Google for our listeners, is it not?
Yeah, when Andre came, Jean Ferret was his name, and then he became Le Géant Jean Ferret. And here was this big monster, and they brought him, they finally brought him over to North America, to Montreal. And it's in Montreal where he had the good fortune of meeting Edouard Carpentier, who became a huge advocate of the Giant, and also Don Leo Jonathan, who in his own right was probably one of the largest wrestlers in the business at that time. So you had the Mormon Giant and Don Leo Jonathan, and then you had Jean Fier, the Giant, who later became Andre, and they had legendary matches and legendary rivalry in Montreal, that they were able to take this rivalry and able to tour it and go different places with it and have big matches around the country with it.
Do you remember, or did you hear the story about Vern Gagne first laying eyes on Andre and wanting to train him for boxing, thinking, man, we could make so much money if this was like a real thing, the biggest boxer in the world? Because heavyweight boxing was obviously big box office. I mean, it captivated, sports fans worldwide in that era. That would have been interesting, I suppose. Did you ever hear that was a harebrained idea of Vern's?
God, I've heard so many different, ideas for what to do with Andre, from boxing to playing football, things of that nature, that a man of his size and athleticism, it's endless. Some of the things that you could have done with him. And I think that the attraction of Andre the Giant as a wrestler was probably the best. It was the closest to being in the circus and being able to perform and travel the world at your own leisure, so to speak, was probably the best option for him.
Did you ever hear the story of General Adnan, who I guess was childhood friends with Saddam Hussein? He eventually started to book some events over there under Hussein's directions. And in 71, supposedly Adnan brought the Giant over to work a match, and they had built a custom bed for him and had a oversized Mercedes to drive around. And they'd planned to do in a best of 3 series, but I guess Saddam Hussein didn't know what wrestling was and tried to give Adnan a pep talk about being victorious and we're counting on you. And this is like out of a movie here, is it not?
Well, again, man, you got to look back in 71 too, though. We weren't, Saddam Hussein had not become the ruthless dictator that he became to be.
Right.
And, it was this leader of Iraq. It's where, Adnan and Hussein were friends. They definitely were friends. And so, yeah, I could definitely see that. There's so many guys that, are giving them pointers and shit and not understanding the workings of the business. And in 1971, it wasn't as widely known. We protected the business back then.
It's just crazy to me. I mean, supposedly during this, Saddam goes to Adnan and says, be victorious. This guy's a big pussy. You can beat him. If he hurts you in any way, he's going to get this. And he lifts his coat and shows a solid gold gun. And he says, I will put every bullet there in his fat head and send it back to France in a pine box. How much of this is legend? How much of this is rumor and innuendo? We'll never know, but it is interesting to think that Once upon a time, not only did Andre wrestle for Saddam Hussein, he also wrestled for Donald Trump at Trump Plaza. It's pretty crazy when you think about how wild and fantastic wrestling can be at times.
Oh God, dude! I mean, all along, and President Bush Senior as well, who was a huge fan of
Right.
Andre's and come out and stuff. So I mean, look, Andre the Giant. Well, everybody knew who Andre the Giant was.
Right.
You didn't have to be a wrestling fan. You just had to be alive, and you knew who Andre the Giant was.
Somewhere early in his career, I think it's Paul Vachon who tells Andre, "Hey, don't let the wrestlers body slam you." Of course, everybody wants to do that and it makes them look good, but it'll mean more down the road if they don't. And I guess that really is the less is more, and you gotta keep them coming back. Do you think that would work today? Today, it feels like you would have to do it early and often.
No, you wouldn't, and that's the thing. If you make it special,
It is.
then you are special, and I think that that's probably one of the issues when you compare today's business to the business of yesteryear is that now nothing's sacred, and if you keep things special for people, if everybody does it, what's special about it?
Correct. Listen, I'm excited that we're talking about Andre. We've got a ton of notes. There's no way we're actually going to get to all of these, but we had so many good questions. I wanted to hit them up. Of course, Andre the Giant, we know, was born as Andre Rene Roussimoff, May 19th, 1946, born in France. He's the third of 5 children. Did you ever talk to Andre about his family? Was he the largest member of his family by far, or were they all big folks?
They were all big folks. I think he had a brother that was decent size as well, but Andre was the athletic one that ventured off from France to become a pro wrestler.
Allegedly, when he's born, he's over 13 pounds back in 1946. At just 12 years old, he's 6'3" tall. It's pretty remarkable. I mean, you had done a lot of stuff at an early age and seen a lot of things through the wrestling business and your parents' backgrounds and all that. Andre's the largest human you'd ever met at that time, right?
Damn right.
When did you know, or when was it sort of more common knowledge, this, pituitary issue that he had, this giantism, for lack of a better word, was maybe a pretty dangerous proposition?
Well, again, I don't know that they really knew that much about it in the regions of France where he was. And as he grew up, that was just normal. They knew that he was different, knew that he was special. And, Andre embraced it and was able to go out and make money off of it.
Got another one here. This is one we've never really talked about. Josh wants to know, would Andre be as legendary if he started 10 to 20 years later? That's sort of fun to fantasy book. We've often talked about how guys were ahead of their time. Do you think Andre was right place, right time? If he came along later, would he have been as big of a deal?
I do think Andre definitely would have been as big of a deal if he came along later, maybe even bigger, because you would have gotten the more athletic, and really mobile Andre the Giant then during a time where there was a higher visibility. So yeah, I think Andre definitely would have been just as big, if not bigger.
Ian says Andre was billed at 7'4". I've heard Conrad once say he thought Big Show was bigger than Andre though. How tall was Andre really? I know that's a silly question. It's not like you ever broke out a tape measure, but you met him. If you had to take a guess.
Andre was bigger. Andre was definitely bigger than Big Show. Not to say the Big Show's a small man. Big Show is fucking huge. I'll tweet out a picture of me when I was 16 years old with Andre. And it's Andre with no shoes on, and then me and Big Show from like 2004 or something like that.
Bobby wants to know, how much did Andre grow between his start with the WWF and his departure? It's sort of a silly question, but I guess with Andre, maybe there is no such thing as a silly question. Did he get taller or just heavier during his WWF run?
Andre definitely got heavier, taller. If he were to be able to stand up straight, who really knows? But in later years, Andre was a little bit more hunched over, so his 7'4" frame was not as tall. When he would stand up straight, yes, he was. But I think just because of the nature of some of the pain and different things that he was going through with his back and his knees and everything, that it became harder for him to stand up straight all the time. And so he was a little hunched over. But he did put on an awful lot of weight.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.